Hello and welcome to The Studio Demands It, an exercise in creative thinking where we will challenge ourselves to conceptualize, pitch, and craft a film or a series based on the demands and stipulations from one of you listeners acting as a hypothetical Hollywood overlord. We talk movies all the time. And as screenwriters ourselves and avid cinephiles, don't worry, I'll explain why I paused there for a second. We like to believe ourselves capable of meeting any demand thrown at us. We will be your screenwriters for this episode. I am TC Witt, and joining me, not knowing that he had a line when I paused just a moment ago.
I wondered if I was supposed to jump in.
That's Jim's catchphrase. You missed it. I'm hoping he took the time to listen to this episode and said it when he should have said it. So.
In that pause. Because you know someone's supposed to talk.
Yeah.
Because dead air isn't like built into the opening. God. That'd be a weird choice.
There was like at least 2 or 3 episodes ago, we discussed that dead air, like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And part of this show is like, we don't edit. We have to keep it going. Right. So we talked about like how long of a pause we can take. And I did Jim's middle name. It was like, Jim. And Jim got like really antsy. He's like, say something.
Please, anyway, I'm not comfortable with silence.
This voice you're hearing, who is not Jim, is Max, Top Hat Balloon Show guy, Olmsted. Max, hello.
That is me. Hello.
Welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here. This has been a long time coming.
It has been. So those who have been listening for a while, I always plug the other 6'5 Media stuff. I've plugged Top Hat Balloon Show endlessly on this show. Well, not endlessly because I'm not doing it right now. Right. No, I am doing it right now. There is points.
I mean, we're talking about it. Talking about it is plugging it, in my opinion.
I agree. But our shows essentially started on 6'5 at the same time, right? So while Jim and I were doing this show right here that you're currently listening to, The Studio Demands It, if you didn't know that was the name of the show, you were over here doing, what were you doing?
I was over here doing the Top Hat Balloon Show, which we did for a year. It is 44 episodes that you can now go and watch either on YouTube or on tophatballoonshow.com. Yeah. So if you want to go watch that, TC is in an episode.
It's true. And it's sketch comedy and it's weird. Like,
it's very weird.
It's Mr. Show. It's Tim and Eric style. It's Kids in the Hall.
It's a different thing every week.
Yeah.
And there are a few of them where it's a series of like 3 that are sort of connected,
like
but very loosely, very loosely. And it was basically an excuse to just do something per week.
It is incredible. So you and Jordan Johnson, your cohort in this, 44 episodes in a year.
Yeah.
And it is not just throw up your phone, shoot a YouTube video. These are legitimately produced short films. It's sketch comedy, and it is goddamn impressive what you guys pulled off.
And we did them on nights and weekends because we all also had full-time jobs and all that. So yeah, it was a lot of work and a lot of fun, and yeah, you can go watch them and hopefully laugh. But if you don't, it's fine. Yeah, it's okay.
That's on you.
It's a curiosity. That's on you. Yeah. Yeah, I'll put it on them. It wasn't my fault. Not my fault you don't laugh.
Yeah. But it was, So I've been trying to get you on here for a while.
Yeah.
And you and I bonded over, we've known each other for a few years at the very least.
Quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since, so we met on Princess Night, I think.
You must have came in.
Or it might have been a 48-hour film project thing.
Right.
Could have been too.
We were just by association. We ran in a similar circle.
Yeah.
And started, we're friends.
Yeah.
But it was shooting when we did the banana thing for your short for Top Hat Balloon. I was documenting that week. I did like a whole documentary series for 14 days. I filmed my whole life for this trip I was on. And our conversation that I was like, this guy's going to be my friend, was during when we filmed that, I caught some behind the scenes and we were discussing Star Trek, and you were like, no movie in a modern era would ever take the time to have a subplot about the thickness of glass to contain whales in a starship.
Which I still think is amazing. And it definitely wouldn't be in a movie now.
No.
But it's so great in that one. Just kind of the logistics of beaming whales onto a starship.
Captain, there be whales in here.
Computer. Hello, computer.
You have to use this. Oh. And they grab it CB style. So yeah, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, and you being particular about that particular thing about the plot. I'm like, I think Max and I are friends. Because here's the thing.
And there it is.
I've said this, and so you can see the title of this episode. I'll say this. We have gotten Star Trek demands from our listeners. So anyone who I looked and we had like 5 or 6. We had 5 that I saw Star Trek in. When I did the word search, Star Trek came up 5 times. So those 5 listeners and anyone who's been waiting for us to do a Star Trek episode are excited right now because we're finally doing it. But I've been saving them because I knew I wanted to have you on.
Yes.
And
I am super excited for this.
And I know that Star Trek comes with certain assumptions about the type of fans Star Trek people are. But
right. There are different groups that you can fall into as a Star Trek fan.
Are you Trekker or Trekkie?
I mean, we'll find out on this episode, I feel like.
Funny enough, and Jim and I have talked about this, Star Trek Into Darkness was what created this show.
Yeah.
That me sitting there bitching about it and Jim going, hold on, okay, let's experiment with this. What would you do if a studio came to you and said remake Wrath of Khan? I'm like, well, I wouldn't do it, is what the correct answer is. And he's like, oh, that's not an option. Now, what would you do? And then we proceeded to create The Studio Demands It. So since then, I knew we were going to eventually do a Star Trek episode. And then once I befriended you, I was like, it's got to be with Max. So,
yeah.
So thank you for coming and sitting in for Jim.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Star Trek Into Darkness was the last midnight showing that I ever went to.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was so burned.
You're like,
by that
never
film.
Again.
I was like, that was the least worth it midnight showing I have ever been to.
I think my least worth it was
painful.
Pirates of the Caribbean World's End.
Ooh.
That was the one where
that's
I'm like,
a bad one.
Why did I go out of my way to build my whole day
Why'd I do
with meeting
this?
with these 10 friends to see this movie?
Ugh.
No.
It sucks too because like for a midnight showing, the excitement gets built up.
Yeah.
It's Star Trek. It's going to be fun. I liked the first one. The first one was fun.
First one's great.
Actiony. It moves. Yeah.
I'm in the first one. Did you know that I was an extra in the 2009 Star Trek?
I did not know.
Yeah, you didn't know that? I am in it. I am in the 2009 Star Trek as an extra. I'm a cadet. I got the uniform and everything.
That's insane.
You're telling me. It was right when I moved to California, and my friend from back in Wisconsin messaged me. He's like, they're doing open call for extras for Star Trek. Get in this line on this day. There. It was like a 5-mile long line, and they only picked 100 people. There was thousands of people waiting in line, and the hot California sun. I'd been in California for like maybe a month. I don't know. Less than that even. And waiting in line all day. And I got picked, and I got to be in the movie. And so talk about a great just moved to LA experience. I got to be on a real set, and I'm going to keep talking about this since it's an opportunity to do so. The first day, J.J. Abrams came before everybody and was like, you people were picked to be in this because you are fans. We are going to make this movie together. I care about making this movie for the fans, which is why we're all here. If you see something that you think, I want to hear your ideas. Like, I'm open to it. This is why you're here. And I thought right there on the spot, I was like, oh my God. He wants to hear, I need to think of a really good reason to talk to J.J. Abrams. Because he said it'd be okay. It's like weeks go by, and we did a scene where Kirk and Spock in front of the Tyler Perry. Kirk gets in trouble, and then it's all the cadets are like, ooh, oh, he's in trouble, ooh. And then we film the end where everyone's like, yay, Kirk, yay. So when we filmed that scene, the assistant director came up. He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We need 3 reactions from the crowd. So I'm going to instruct you. You're all going to get up and react and what have you. So the first reaction is everyone like, oh, what's happening? Oh, so 1, 2, 3, action. Oh no, Kirk's in trouble. What happened? All right, and then the second reaction, we're all going to, they've saved the day, the end of the movie. We're all happy. So everyone, yay, get up and applaud. Yay. All right, great. We got everything we needed. We're moving on. And I thought, wait, we only did 2. We didn't do the third. Now's my in. That's my in. I can say, hey, excuse me, we should have done a third. And so they switched the scene around. they picked me and like 5 or 6 other people to sit at the very front row for like some close-ups. J.J. Abrams stands in front of us and he's like, so how's it all going? And I'm like, dude, this is my in. I can tell. Okay, so this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, excuse me, Mr. Abrams. Earlier, your assistant director, Tommy, said we were going to do 3 reaction shots with all the extras here. And we only did 2. And you didn't get that 3rd one and you may have wanted it. Are you following me here? And he was going to go, oh my gosh, you're right. Thank you so much. What's your name? I'd say TC. And he says, TC, I'm JJ. We're friends now. I'm going to give you a bigger role in the movie or something. I had it all worked out. Unfortunately, what actually came out of my mouth was JJ. I was like, hey, how's everyone going? Earlier, before when we did the reactions, we were supposed to 3 and we only got 2. I was so nervous. The guy next to me was like looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I can't stop. And he looked at me with such a short bus look in his eye.
Oh no.
Where he's like, oh, we got everything we needed. Thanks. And then sort of looked off in the distance like, oh, I think I'm needed over there, and walked away. And I'm like,
oh, poor past TC.
I'm never talking to a celebrity again in my life. So that
But you have a great story out of it.
I do. I hope that wasn't too long of an
No,
anecdote.
that was great. Also, you got to be in Star Trek.
That's true.
Incredible.
I know where all the spots I'm in. I'm like 5 different spots in the movie where I'm like, there I am. There's one in particular where my whole head takes up the screen.
Damn.
From behind.
Well, now I want to watch it again and just play Spot the TC.
See if you can find me. I'm in a red uniform, so
there we go. And you don't die. That's interesting.
Well, you don't know that.
You never know.
I mean, I am here right now, but you know
That's
my
true.
character survived.
Good point.
Well, let's just jump into this actual demand for the episode. The listeners have given us a growing collection of demands from studios literally all over the world. These demands have been submitted at studiodemands.com or at Twitter at studiodemands. You can send us any demand you like, and we have to come up with something right here on the spot. So thanks for everyone who keeps submitting. Keep them coming. And today, as I said, I've been saving these. I snagged a few that I could find, but there's one in particular that I was like, okay, this is the demand. So I will say Mike Smart from Odd One Pictures, I do see your demand. We'll probably touch on it in this specifically. But this demand comes from Dee Dee at Discover Something Better Studios. And I read, after 7 years on television, Star Trek The Next Generation was bestowed the honor to see their adventures continue on the big screen with 4 films of varying degrees of quality. No argument there.
Very true.
Which one's the best one of those 4? It's First Contact, right?
Oh yeah, First Contact has got to be.
It's not Generations.
It's the stick out one.
It's not Insurrection, because that's like an episode.
I do like Insurrection.
Yeah.
Just because it's just like a high budget episode basically.
Yeah. Which is probably more of what they should have leaned in. And it's definitely not Nemesis.
No, it's for sure not Nemesis.
So I think it's First
like
Contact.
Picard in a 4-wheeler, and then they kill Data, and there's B4, the worst name for a robot possible, just so on the nose.
And it's funny because and we'll get back to the demand. Sorry, Dee Dee, we'll get there. With Nemesis, it's like Brett Spiner had too much control over the plot, and he really pushed his ego on it. I'm surprised Patrick Stewart, who's now letting his ego dictate a TV series, didn't get some push in there, because originally the concept was Shizor was going to be Patrick Stewart and not Tom Hardy. They were going to have Patrick Stewart play both
That
roles.
would have made more sense.
It probably would have been a better movie.
Yeah.
Maybe not that much better, but
but at least they would have looked like clones, which is what
instead of the prosthetic nose on Tom Hardy.
Right.
And we know from Next Generation, Picard had hair when he was younger.
Right.
He didn't start going bald until he was well after his cadet years.
So that's confusing. It already doesn't line up.
I don't think so. Actually.
No.
All right, where was I?
Actually, two. We did 2. There's supposed to be 3.
Yeah.
Just
saying.
So we're clear, Mr. Abrams.
Very degrees. You leave me alone. Don't you dare call back.
You left the door open.
Oh my God.
You left the door open.
The following series, Deep Space Nine, was not given the same honor by Paramount. Neither was Voyager. despite going through 7 seasons as well, through no fault of their own. In fact, it was the complete bomb of 2002's Star Trek X Nemesis that caused the reason Paramount didn't trust any other Star Trek franchise to get films.
Oh, that's such a shame.
That move broke the tradition of the bomb of Nemesis, broke the tradition of even number Star Trek films being good. And it put an end to Star Trek on the big screen until 2009 when J.J. Abrams rebooted TOS. And I got to be in a movie.
Right.
This is a travesty and must be remedied. My demand is a Deep Space Nine film. You are not restricted by time. If you think this should have come out in 2004 after Nemesis, go for it. If you think you could pull it off coming out now, go for it. Save Trek from everything that's come since the death of the series in 2004. Thanks, guys. All right, Dee Dee. That's your demand right there.
That's a good demand.
There was...
because it is a tragedy that Deep Space Nine does not have any movies. And that, I mean, frankly, that it didn't continue. Because, if you said you watched the most recent documentary, What We Left Behind.
The What We Left Behind documentary.
Where they beat out the entire 8th season. And to me, I was like...
Give me that.
Yes. Let's just continue the series with that, and I'd be happy.
Well, Mike Smart over the other demand we got said the writing team of the series conceptualized... Ira Burr, I think is the showrunner's name, or the head writer.
I believe so.
They conceptualized Season 8, Episode 1 continuation 10 years after DS9's conclusion. With what they set up, how would you do a full season? So you recommended that documentary to me when I discovered you were, in fact, a fan of Star Trek.
Right.
There's 2 things I don't have enough in my life. Friends who like musicals and friends who like Star Trek.
And I am both of those
And you are
things.
both. So everyone else step aside. Max is my new BFF. Sorry, gang. No.
I have always liked Star Trek. Always grew up liking Star Trek. I haven't always liked musicals.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of I'm new to the musical
you're
scene.
New to the theater department.
Not new to the Star Trek scene. So my introduction to Star Trek was back when Netflix was only shipping out DVDs.
Whoa, okay. Original Netflix.
Yep, original Netflix.
Original recipe Netflix.
Where it was just discs. And my family and I were going through The Next Generation, and it would be 4 episodes per disc. Mm-hmm. And then we're like, oh, we're done.
Gotta send the DVD
Gotta send the DVD back and get 4 more. And we'd have to wait like a week.
And you slowly got to digest it.
Physical media.
Oh my gosh. That's CDs you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Compact discs.
Right, compact discs. There's a theme here.
Which series was that? Was that
Next Generation?
Next Generation, okay.
Yep, Next Generation, and then we also watched Voyager that way. Mm-hmm. And then I think eventually streaming kicked in, and we just binged.
Yeah. Consume.
Yeah. Daily dose of Star Trek. Necessary.
I don't remember exactly how I got into Star Trek. Like, there was no direct thing or person that introduced me to it. But I do remember when I was young, starting to catch the syndicate. When Next Generation was on the air, I would catch it from time to time. Mm-hmm. And despite the fact that my young mind could understand that Saturday morning cartoons were on from 8 to noon every Saturday on a schedule, and that Disney in the afternoon ran from 3 to 5 every day, I couldn't wrap my mind around, like, oh yes, Star Trek will always be on at 7 o'clock on a Friday or whatever. So I never knew when it would come on. I would just like watch it. Right.
Just like turn the TV on and be like,
oh good.
Is Star Trek on?
Check the preview channel. See what Star Trek's playing.
Hopefully we can catch up.
I got enough into it that I wrote fan fiction in like 6th grade. I wrote I'm Captain T.C. Witt and all my best friends are on my ship.
That's so cool.
The one thing I remember is I made my friend Sam the chief of operations.
Yeah.
But I spelled it chef. So like if I go back and look at my old writings, it's like Chef Sam Shea. Why is he in engineering? I don't know. He's the chef.
He's the chef. He's the chef of operations. There's a bunch of recipes about operations, And it's great.
Just little by little, I started like consuming. And then I remember seeing First Contact in theaters and Insurrection in theaters. I think I saw Generations in theaters as well. And then I went back and watched the Kirk movies and started like, no, Picard, I like them. Then I started getting an appreciation for TOS. And then Deep Space Nine became something that I watched. But Voyager, when UPN launched, I don't know if you remember UPN as a network, it was what eventually became the CW.
Gotcha.
There used to be UPN and WB used to be two networks that combined into CW. And Voyager was their launch show. They launched the series with, I'd see if I can remember, Pigsty, Platypus Man, were their two sitcoms. There was a very Chuck-esque series about what Christopher Lloyd starred in that was like video games like escaped and were like in our reality, and the guy who made the game had to like, it was called Deadly Games or something like that. Whatever.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And then Star Trek Voyager. And there was a Richard Grieco show that had Gates McFadden on it, who was Dr. Crusher from... I don't know why I remember all this. Yeah. But Voyager launched...
Everything on UPN. This is the UPN podcast?
I'm being paid by...
UPN. By the CW now.
It's the CW now. But that's how I got into Voyager. And then I went back. And then I finally... Sorry, long story long. People are like, get to the episode! I started watching Deep Space Nine from the beginning, and over the course of the series, just like, this is my favorite.
Yeah.
I freaking love these characters. I love the world that it's set in. I love the station. These characters are great. And it's amazing because you'd think being able to literally go anywhere in the galaxy would be better, but there's something about the restriction of the space station that made it a better vehicle for developing characters. And
because the writers say this a lot in interviews, but what could have been a handicap, the station being stationary, they used as a strength because they fleshed out all these different races in the Alpha Quadrant.
Yes.
And it's basically foreign policy in space, where you have the Cardassians, which are basically allegory for the Nazis. Mm-hmm. You have the Bajorans, which are, Jewish people.
Allegory for Jewish people.
Allegory for Jewish people. And then, you have Klingons and Romulans, and they're
Ferengi.
And you know so much about all these races, and what they would do in any given situation, and their set of values is so established that just throwing them in a room together is interesting, because you're like, okay, how are all these races going to react when presented with, whatever situation? Mm-hmm. And it's like the perfect ground for any kind of, political commentary
and which is what Star Trek has always been the best at. Like, you see the newer stuff now. I don't want to spend I've already spent too much of this episode just like loving on Star Trek, but I don't want to spend too much of it hating on what we got. Like the Star Trek Discovery and Picard. Mm-hmm. I'm not really a fan of that stuff because I feel like it's lost its way from Gene Roddenberry's vision of that utopian future of it's no longer a conflict amongst humans per se. It's a conflict amongst the galaxy, and using that as a way to address real life. It's the best kind of sci-fi. Like, let's address real things that we deal with on planet Earth via these aliens and whatnot. So you can deal with gender and identity and race using aliens and creatures.
Right. And especially since, modern times are so rife with so many things that you could comment on, just the fact that we don't have a show that is doing that is a tragedy.
Having Captain Sisko, the black man that he is, what he did, representing this powerful black man on television at the time. Fast forward 20 years, the Black Lives Matter movement being what it is now, to give voice to that on Star Trek, holy shit. Like, I wish Deep Space Nine could exist right here and now, because the way that series delved into those very real subjects in the 90s, because the show ended in 99. God, can you imagine if just 2 years forward to watch Deep Space Nine handle September 11th? Like, how would they have handled that?
Right.
Because...
And then how do you bring Kira, that character, past that event? Right. Because she describes herself as a terrorist.
Yeah.
And how do you make that character sympathetic after the events of 9/11.
To come from a life of being a terrorist and then somehow reflect,
or to be labeled as a terrorist,
right? And like she the only way she could survive was to be a terrorist, to rebel, yeah. So our demand. So Dee Dee said we could try to set this in 2004 after Nemesis had come out, or we could try to set it now. Oh, good thing that cup was empty. Mm-hmm. Such a loud drinker over here. So I think that's, and there's so much to like pick and choose at here. We haven't talked about Bashir or Worf or Dax, for crying out loud. The fact that Ezri is such a good character in the limited time.
Yeah.
I don't want to say she's as good as Jadzia. Jadzia was awesome, and that whole situation that got her off the show was so disappointing. But I'm genuinely impressed on how quickly they folded Ezri in.
It was impressive. Because you have...
I sense by your face you're not a big fan of hers, though.
No, well, okay. So I was really attached to Jadzia.
Oh, sure.
And then she dies, and it's not in a very good way.
No.
It's not in a way that
it was befitting
kind of honors
of the character.
Yeah, befitting of the character or honors the character. And so after that happened, Morgan, my wife, and I were watching it, and we stopped for quite a while because we were kind of just mourning that character and being like, how can we continue watching this when one of our favorite characters is gone?
Yeah.
And then they bring in Ezri, and to me it's a bit of a rocky start because
they had less than a season to make her matter.
Right. And then to me, you know, when you have that character that can be any gender and any race and any species, and have that character die and then replace her with basically a white female person, basically the same character, and try to kind of replicate that is sort of a weird choice for me, where you could use that as an opportunity to bring in some other element.
Sure. Yeah.
And to use that to... And they do kind of do that where Worf can't accept that
you are not her.
You are not her, and you are a different person. And she does have some very good episodes, but on the whole, I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity for me.
I 100% agree that I wish Jadzia had stayed. And it's funny that we just did this nice little bit about like the least important character of the series, because to go back to like the station being stationary, what that allowed is not just the main cast to be so wonderfully fleshed out, not just all the races, but all the side characters like Garrick and Ram and all these like supporting characters have Gul Dukat, like one of the best villains in Star Trek. What a journey for that guy.
Yeah.
Like I love that all the tertiary characters, Galran, right? That's the Klingon. It's a journey. Like it's not just the core cast. Like when you look at the original series or Next Generation and even Voyager, they are quite a small cast of characters, whereas Deep Space Nine has this massive cast of reoccurring characters that you could do whole episodes on non-main characters.
Right. Has a massive cast, has a ton of guest stars that are memorable and that you love. And going along with your point, I think Deep Space Nine is just, it has the best overall arc and character development for an entire series of all of Star Trek, and to me in all of television, because it's just everybody, no matter how small, gets an arc and affects things across the entire series,
which then affects the entire universe of Star Trek, which there's echoes of what happens on Deep Space Nine that flash into Voyager and how that show like unfolded in the Delta Quadrant. Who is your favorite character? Can you pick one as your favorite of the main cast? Because like I love Julian, particularly because he's so obnoxious at the beginning and how much he grows, and him and Miles have one of the best bromances.
Oh, it's so great! Just their whole friendship, and
just like the absolute grease on your hands working man that is Miles O'Brien, and Julian, the like spoiled rich boy,
right?
And just their bromance is so amazing.
But then you get episodes with Julian. I don't know. I forget what the episode is called, but he goes to a planet and everyone is infected with some kind of disease.
Mm-hmm.
And he meets this pregnant woman, and then this guy, Trevian, I think is his name.
Oh, you. Yeah, you're doing better than me. Keep going.
who is basically running this town and basically doing assisted suicide because this disease is incurable.
Mm-hmm.
And then Julian goes through this journey of curing this disease, and it's this huge character development episode for him. And there's episodes like that where he's not like a lighthearted, goofy guy. He starts from that, as you said in the beginning, and then he very much grows as a character into a much more mature and talented person.
And I think, and you said earlier, like every character got that opportunity to do that. I've said it to you more than once that you can see the transition of 90s television to 2000s television on Deep Space Nine, because Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore both worked on that show, and they went off to do Battlestar Galactica and 24, right? Swap the names in the shows, so I just said.
Strike that reverse.
There you go. So the question is, do we conceive this as it would have come out in 2004 after Nemesis, or do we do it now with so much time passed? So we're not restricted by time. So because this is a what if, we can pick the optimal, like the best case scenario here. And I feel like the best case scenario is to do it in 2004, but we can pick anywhere. Like what does your heart tell you?
I would say either in 2004 or now you could come up with something in like a Deep Space Nine that exists well in both periods. Because I feel like you can take that cast of characters and that show and apply it to either current events or events that were happening then.
I don't recall.
And have it be just as impactful and good.
Did I? Oh no. Okay, I didn't know if she had specified a reboot, but she did say continuation. So
gotcha.
We're not like, because that's the thing. You could when J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek came out, and they started progressing with that series with all its hiccups and whatnot. I thought, okay, they've built themselves a nice out. As soon as this stops making money, they can then proceed to Next Generation, which they did. They just did it in the shows.
Right.
Like they went to Picard next. But they still backstepped into before the Kelvinverse or whatnot, and they did Discovery, and they sort of kept playing in like the Star Trek, for as much as it's expanded generationally, they sort of like lock themselves into bookend to bookend, and they don't
into that timeline. And not going forward into the future.
Right.
From Voyager.
So yes, like it is Voyager, basically the prologue of Star Trek 2009 is the end of the original canonical universe, and now we have this fractured new universe which is darker and more action packed, and they say the F word.
Right.
Deep Space Nine being inserted into the stuff now, I worry what that would be like.
Yeah, that is true. Inserting it into sort of a Picard, where it has to interact with Picard and Discovery. And eventually Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
That is a good point. It
worries me to put it now because I see what these shows are attempting now, and it feels disingenuous to what Star Trek has always had the heart of Star Trek. And I know maybe I'm being not my Star Trek. I prefer Brave New Worlds and all that. But there's something that worries me about trying to put Deep Space Nine now, because I feel like it would be really heavy-handed and really trying to address certain issues, where Star Trek has always found a beautiful subtlety, or if it's obvious, that they handle it very well. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I know it's on us to come up with something.
Yeah. I think if it was set now, I would want to separate it from the Discoveries and the Picards, from the existing universe, basically. So just ignore all that.
I will say, no.
Restart that one.
And I'm okay with that, because I think courtesy of Into the Spider-Verse and what Marvel is unlocking for the public at large is the natural comfort of a multiverse. I really do think that because of the MCU unlocking multiverse to a normal consumer of entertainment, it's so much easier now to go, wait, yeah, we can have this and this exist side by side, and no one will be confused that they're not connected anymore.
Right. It's a different dimension. It's through a wormhole.
It's through a wormhole.
We can restart our whatever we want, whatever excuse we want to make.
So then I will say, okay, so it ended in 1999, 2009, 2019. We're 20 plus years since the end. Do you want to use anything from their pitch for season 8, episode 1 from the documentary? Or do you just want to go from the 1999 Cisco went into the wormhole and then go, you know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying?
Let's go from 1999.
Okay, so we're not gonna try to be any better than Ira Burr and the gang.
I don't think so.
They'll do what they do. We're entering a multiverse.
They're doing their own thing.
Okay, and I'm in agreement. If I'm agreeing with you that this exists in that timeline where Voyager, Nemesis, that all existed, but we don't have the 2009 Star Trek or Beyond.
Yes, agreed.
And I don't mean or Beyond as in the movie Beyond. I do mean that. I just mean
in time.
In time.
Beyond that.
That's it.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, cool. So with that in agreement, and after so much babble to get to this point, I'm just going to throw the commercial right here.
Okay.
So then we can come back uninterrupted with Dee Dee's demand and the stipulations we've now set for ourselves. So take a quick break here. Hear from 6'5 Media. Maybe there'll be a Top Hat Balloon commercial here.
There might be. You don't know.
There also might not be. There might be an ad for a different show. But
we'll see.
We'll find out. Well,
David, it seems like it would be appropriate to put a Top Hat Balloon ad here. Welcome to the Top Hat Balloon Show. I'm Max.
And I'm Jordan.
And here are some things you might see on our channel.
Yeah, take a look.
A few clips.
Bread and butter's my bread and butter, you know what I mean?
I do.
Hello, here's a mail. It's for you. Goodbye.
I'm here to represent this product, and the whole point of the jingle is that you'll remember me in some fashion.
Well, that was a great montage.
Yes, it was. You covered my face with your hand.
I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Watch the show.
1 heist, 6 plots for betrayal. When Raya Cautela cons 5 other thieves into helping her steal a magical artifact from the most powerful man in the world, she knows she's playing with fire. What she doesn't know is that the rest of her crew is just as underhanded as she is, and they all have plans of their own. MJ Kuhn's Among Thieves, a fantasy heist novel full of twists, turns, and betrayal, available beginning September 7th wherever books are sold. Visit mjkuhn.com for more details.
Welcome to our new podcast. Welcome to our new podcast.
This isn't working.
Agreed. I think we're going to have to do it turn by turn.
Well, now that you mention it, we are a brand new RPG video game podcast.
Our very existence hinges on turn-based gaming.
So join us on the Turn by Turn podcast, where we'll be talking about
Pokemon, Fire Emblem, Golden Sun, Shining Force, Mother, and so many more.
It's your turn to come and join us.
Jake, have you ever been looking for a definitive Nintendo ranking and can't seem to find it because it's just everybody's own opinion?
Honestly, all the time, Sam.
Well, I'm looking for someone to give us the answers.
Wait, you mean like a podcast made by 2 young, handsome men where they create a definitive top 5 list of all things Nintendo?
Should we just do it ourselves?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Let's give it a shot. I'm Sam.
And I'm Jake.
And at Top 5 Nintendo, I'm going to give you my top 5 list.
And I'm going to give you my top 5 list.
And then we're going to duke it out and see what the real top 5 is.
Kai Wynn is a monster of a being. We're sorry, we were just discussing one of the greatest villains on the series, the Karen of all Karens 20 years before it was a thing. Frickin' Kai Wynn. Oh, I hated that woman. But you're right. She has some of the best episodes.
She does. She's that love to hate character. And she's also it's kind of the allegory for the worst of what religion can be.
Yes.
Is Kai Wynn.
She is a zealot through and through. And this apologist where, like, even if you show her the cold hard facts of how wrong she is, she'll just manipulate it into why she's right. Ugh.
And where it's all about power, and everything that she does is politically motivated to get her elected to be Kai. And it's just
Deep Space,
disgusting.
I love it though, like, because I think Deep Space Nine created some of the best villains. Which the Borg, what an incredible space zombies, right? Like, what an incredible,
fantastic
villain.
idea.
Yeah, and the fact that Voyager just like gave up on trying to do anything new, and they're like, we're just doing Borgs. The Klingons of the original series, the Romulans, like the races that Star Trek has created, and even not to just like to go alienate the aliens, some of the best human villains. Khan is arguably the greatest villain in Star Trek, and he's a human. So like, I think what Deep Space Nine did that the others did not was actual people who are the best villains. Gul Dukat and Kai Wynn being the first two that pop into my head as far as like what DS9 created, right?
Right. And it's also, the term villain is sort of used loosely too, because they all have this kind of moral gray area of, they're doing this really bad stuff, but you can, from their perspective, you can see why, and you can understand
they are right.
Right, you can understand their motivations, and there's a lot of subtlety to it. Like in the pilot of DS9, which I think is is the best pilot in Star Trek. The villain is basically it's something everybody can relate to, the death of a spouse.
Yeah. At Sisko, that Benjamin loses his wife it wasn't his fault, but he put her there. He chose the life he chose to be in Starfleet. It happens on Wolf during the Battle of the Borg.
Wolf 359, yeah.
And he loses his wife, and he's left with a son, and he's assigned a new place to live. Like, it's a great entry point that you don't get from TOS, TNG, or Voyager, because all those captains, all those main characters, essentially, I know those shows are always ensemble, but it does come down to the captain. Those captains already exist comfortably in their space, more or less. They aren't being introduced into a whole new world with the audience. The audience is being introduced to this whole new world. With Sisko, we're being brought along with him, and it's like, none of the systems work, because when the Cardassians left, what did they call it? Terek Nor. They like screwed up everything they could, so it was that much harder for the Starfleet to move in. So you got, Chief O'Brien doing his damnedest to keep things working, and
Chief O'Brien is just constantly working every day, just so the station just works.
So it doesn't.
It's on the verge of breaking constantly, and the only glue that's holding it together is Miles O'Brien. And I think it's a really interesting choice to start DS9 by making Sisko and Picard basically enemies, because since Locutus was in charge during the attack.
Yeah, he led the attack to Wolf.
Right, he led the attack.
You killed my wife, dude.
Right, right. So that to take the most beloved captain in all of Star Trek and make our new main character have a beef with that guy,
immediately
is ballsy.
Immediately, you created problems with the fans. Like, how dare you?
How dare you?
Do not disrespect Jean-Luc. But they did such a wonderful job of saying, this isn't the next generation. This is something wholly on its own. And you're right, that pilot, I'll criticize the pilot. I think Avery Brooks is amazing, but damn, does he overact in that first one. He overacted for the first
totally.
3 seasons.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
He comes from theater, so a lot of his performances are very like playing to the back row.
Very big. Yeah. It's very big. And some of the lines of dialogue that are delivered, like the lines are good, but sometimes how he says it is just a little off. I don't know how to explain it.
It's playing to the back row.
Yeah.
He's like, I want you to know that I'm saying this.
It's very halted too. There's a lot of these like weird pauses.
But man, I didn't realize some of the episodes he directed and how much of a craftsman he was. The documentary, What We Left Behind, delves into his directing style and what a fascinating, cool dude he seemed like.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So you asked me to remind you what happened in the finale. So I am going to
so where are we? Let's set the stage.
Yeah, so this is where it ends in 1999. I'm going to rattle off the Wikipedia for those. Go ahead and skip ahead 3 minutes if
this is old news to you and you remember literally where every character in DS9 is at the end of it. Then skip.
You can skip ahead.
Go do it.
Click.
If you're that confident, go for it.
As the Federation and their allies prepare to embark on the final offensive of the Dominion War, Sisko's mother, Sarah, one of the prophets, appears to him in a vision, telling him his journey's end lies not before you, but behind you. So in the battle between the Dominion and Federation, so the Dominion, which is the Breen and the Cardassian, and the Federation, Klingon, and Romulan fleet begins. Kira, Garrick, Damar hiding on Cardassia Prime. So Damar was the turncoat Cardassian who ends up becoming the leader. That's probably in this breakdown. Why am I telling you? They sabotage the Cardassian power grid, cutting off communication between the Dominion fleet and the command center. In retaliation, the founder in command orders the Jem'Hadar to wipe out the Cardassian cities. A Cardassian city. Kira, Garrick, and Damar are captured, but as the Jem'Hadar prepare to kill them, Cardassian soldiers turn on the Jem'Hadar. Again, such a cool villain. Like, the Jem'Hadar and the founders, the freaking shapeshifters, and then their foot soldiers who are, like, dependent on the juice that they
they are controlled by their addiction, which is a super interesting concept.
As Starfleet and their allies are suffering many losses, the Cardassian ships switch sides, turning the tide of the battle. Cool moment. I actually just kind of got goosebumps. This is so nerdy of me, but I'm just remembering that moment where all the Cardassian ships just turn, and it's like all like the Romulans, the Klingons, the Federation, the Cardassians, just
it's amazing.
They turn on the founders to discover this. They order the eradication of the Cardassians, and the Jem'Hadar begin leveling cities, city after city. The Alliance fleet prepares to mount a final offensive. Kira and her team storm the command center, capturing the founder. Damar is killed in the process. Oh, Damar was the Klingon, right? The Cardassian who turned?
Yes.
Okay. The founder initially refuses to surrender, choosing instead to make the battle as costly as possible for the Alliance. Odo beams to the command center and persuades the founder to link with him. Joining their liquid bodies, he cures her of the changeling disease, and she orders the Dominion forces to surrender. Odo tells Kira that he has agreed to cure the other founders, but needs to join them permanently. The founders agree, oh man, this actually works perfectly because Renee Aubrey-Jones passed away.
Right.
So Odo not being around 20 years later, there's no reason we couldn't find a way to bring changelings back into this, but we'll cross that bridge. The founders agree to stand trial for war crimes and signs an armistice to end the war. Back on DS9, the crew celebrates at Vic Fontaine's simulated 1960 lounge. What a weird thing.
I love that character, and that just the idea of a hologram that's very aware he's a hologram and he's okay with it.
Yeah.
Is just...
I would have loved Vic Fontaine to meet the Doctor.
Yes.
Because
that would have been great.
Voyager did a really incredible thing about like hologram rights.
Yeah.
Like what a strange thing to develop, but that like holograms could gain sentience, the emergency medical physician, the doctor, right?
The EMH, yeah.
The EMH, there you go.
And there's that episode where he gets transferred back to Earth and finds that his like model of hologram has been decommissioned, and is basically working cleaning pipes somewhere, and they're all
just Robert Picardo as far as the eye can see.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're slaves essentially.
Yeah. It's wild.
That's in Voyager territory there. Meanwhile, on Bajor, Dukat and Wynn travel to the fire caves with an ancient book to release the power wraiths. Wynn poisons Dukat as a sacrifice, expecting to become the wraith's emissary. They possess Dukat instead, resurrecting him. So badass. On DS9, Cisco suddenly becomes aware that he must go to the fire caves. Once there, he attacks Dukat, who easily subdues him with the power wraith's power. Wynn tries to destroy the book, but Dukat kills her. Good. While Dukat is distracted,
hooray!
Cisco attacks Dukat, falling with him and the book into the fiery chasm. Cisco finds himself in the wormhole, where Sarah tells him that the power wraiths will never emerge again. The DS9 crew is puzzled by Cisco's disappearance until he comes to his wife, Cassidy Yates, in a vision. He assures her he will return, though he doesn't know when. Many of the crew go their separate ways. O'Brien is going to teach at Starfleet Academy, and Worf is appointed the Federation ambassador to the Klingon Empire. Kira takes Odo to the Founder's planet. Well, I actually just got a little chill there for that goodbye. And where he joins the Great Link and cures their disease. Kira returns to DS9, now the station's commander, and she and Cisco's son Jake gaze out the window at the wormhole. There we go.
There we go.
Bashir hooks up with
Here
Ezri.
we are.
Bashir hooks up with Ezri. They didn't mention that in there.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, they remember sleeping together.
Right.
So there we go.
There we are.
So that's where we left in 1999 in our time, whatever. I don't know what the start date was, but 179 episodes of DS9 took us to that point. A lot of wonderful farewells and conclusions to all these characters. 20 years later, what do we do with these characters? Where do we go?
I would say, so if you're, whether it's a movie or a limited miniseries, I think the main arc has to revolve around Cisco's return.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were reading that power wraith thing and how they're never going to come back, to me, if Cisco can return,
why can't the pirates?
Why can't Gul Dukat return?
Oh, yeah.
So what?
Two emissaries.
Yeah. What if you open on some sort of resurrection of Dukat?
So this is our villain.
Okay. And we're following that story.
Well,
and what that means for the universe.
That's this hope of you joked that Cisco Jesus himself.
Oh yeah, Cisco Jesus himself. So
yeah,
he's been sacrificed, and he's going to come back after 3 days or whatever,
or 30 years,
or, however many.
But what happens in a scenario where when you're expecting the return of the sacrifice and it's the bad one?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
because this is what will make or break this, whether we come up with something good or not. It's going to come down to the villain, because Star Trek is only ever has been as good as its villain.
Right.
Especially the movies. Wrath of Khan being the best of the best. Right. The motion picture being real hard to digest, being that the villain is a thing.
It's a robot.
It's an undulating space vagina is what it is.
Exactly. Kind of hard to relate or sympathize with that.
Or an anus. I mean, you pick a side. Pick a side.
Pick one of those.
So you're suggesting that we have Gul Dukat come back.
So, as you were saying, what if it opens on? It's this huge lead up to this day that a certain sect of Bajor thinks that Cisco is going to return. The emissary.
The signs have been there. The emissary is returning.
Okay. The emissary is returning, and there's this whole celebration and ritual or something. And then instead of Cisco, it's Dukat.
Dukat appears.
And it's the power wraiths.
Not just a power wraith. Not just that it's a Dukat, but that he's a Cardassian. He's like the representation of... It's like if...
Evil.
It's like if Hitler came back to life at a Jewish celebration.
Right. Instead of Jesus.
Well, no, the Jews don't believe in Jesus.
Right.
Just to be clear.
As we all know.
Well, okay.
That's a different conversation.
That's quite the opening to throw. I want to, being a studio, thinking producer here, thinking what the screenwriters would have to do. we have to reintroduce this Star Trek to a new audience. We can't just pick up expecting the fans of DS9 to come in.
True.
So there's a little bit of, if we do open with this very, okay, we understand this is some sort of religious thing, and they're expecting something good to show up, and a bad guy shows up, then you have, Dukat appears. A layman would go, that's probably bad by their reaction. The fans would know, holy shit, that's awesome. Like, I think that
fans would love it.
Yeah.
People who don't know would be like, who's Dukat?
But I don't think that it would matter if it's Dukat or not. They would just be able to see and tell this is bad. So I think it works as a cold open, essentially, because then you can hit the theme song, you can do the title screen, and then
so good.
And then come down to Deep Space Nine and the beginning of introducing this audience, this new audience and the old audience, to reintroduce and introduce to the station, who's there and who our hero is going to be. And if we open with that cold open, we show Dukat as this resurrected, superpowered villain. Eventually, we're going to need to know what his motives are, like what's his plan. But the next thing we show is got to be the heroes. So who are we introducing as our hero here? Right? Because we come to Deep Space Nine, which is the title of this thing. People are like, oh, this must be the station in the title. Again, thinking like a normie who might be like, hey, I like that new Star Trek. I'll go check it out. Oh, yeah, that's the station, the Deep Space something or other. Kira was left commander of the station.
Right.
This is an ensemble thing, but I guess we need to figure out who are our main characters in this. We have O'Brien, we have Worf, we have Jake, Kira, Julian. We could bring a different Dax in if Ezri's so hated that we can just be like, she transferred to a new body, and then that gets us an opportunity to introduce. Oh, okay. You'll have to correct me if you know, or a Trekkie will have to correct me if we can't. Julian and Ezri decided at some point that they want to have children. But in order for that to happen, Ezri had to give up the symbiote. This is just, I don't know if this works for the biology or the canon of the Trills.
Yeah.
But if she was never meant to have it anyway, if their decision to want to have children comes into play at some point in the past 20 years, we meet Julian and Ezri, and they are just husband and wife. She's a Trill without a symbiote. Then we can put the symbiote into a new character.
That could be interesting.
And additionally, we could always introduce a child of Julian and Ezri that could be a character as well.
Right. And thinking about Ezri and Julian, there could also be a conflict between, since Julian, we kind of left him and what's the secret agent?
42, 20, 44, 33.
Sector 67.
It's the secret like covert ops unit.
Yeah, the covert ops unit of Star Trek. So Julian's kind of part of that, and that wasn't really resolved. So bringing that back, as was said in the DS9 documentary, would be interesting. And if he's having a child now, that could
Sector 31.
Sector 31.
Section 31. There.
Section 31.
Yeah. If he has had a child.
If he has had a child. His being a secret agent would be difficult when you're also trying to be a parent.
Look at what we just created. He's inheriting the lifestyle of Garrick. Right? Because Garrick
Plain simple Garrick.
He is... No, I retired from the secret agency. That's all here. I was never really involved in that sort of stuff anyway. Garrick would be is Garrick still alive? I can't remember if he survived.
I believe yes.
To be like, Julian, you are clearly a secret agent still.
No.
That would be amazing.
To flip those character dynamics.
Yeah.
And have Garrick be the one trying to figure out things about Julian.
As just a subplot in this. I don't think this. It can't just be a film. Like, this has to be a miniseries.
Yeah, it has to be. To resolve everything that was left off in the series, I feel like you couldn't do it in a movie, or it'd be like a 6-hour movie.
Or we set ourselves up for like a trilogy of sorts. But because honestly, the TOS movies connect so well.
Yeah.
Like one of the best trilogies is Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home. That works as a trilogy.
It's so good, and they lead directly into the next one.
Into the next. So whether this ends up being a miniseries or a series of films, we're hashing out plot points at this point. But Julian and Ezri starting a family, him retired from being in Section 31, they have a kid who, maybe is critical to the plot or is not involved. We don't know quite yet as we're whiteboarding this. But I love the idea that he is still involved. At some point in this, it would be a matter of like when a cop is undercover with a gang in a movie, and then they finally have that moment where they have to call in backup, and it's like, you've been an agent the whole time. Like having,
and just the idea of having Garrick not know information about Julian sounds hilarious. Because he knows everything. He may be coy about it, but he knows everything about everybody, and for him to have something that he doesn't know,
it would drive him nuts.
Be hilarious.
Love Garrick. He's just one of the best. And Andrew Robinson, I think, is the actor's name.
I believe so. Yeah.
I love that they basically, like, he is gay. Like, he played the character gay, whether it was ever written that way or not, and he like loves Julian, and like I just love his flamboyancy, and he's just one of the best freaking characters in that show, and he's not even a main character.
I love there's one of my favorite Garrick moments of all time is when Cisco and the crew are all undercover in the Defiant, and they're pretending to be some like storage vessel or something like that. And they're like a Cardassian ship comes across them, and they have to like hail them and pretend to be just normal people like carrying a shipment to some planet. And then Garrick just shuts the whole facade down and is like, no, this is who we are, and here's this code. We're
Starfleet, and we're actually trying to sneak in here, and here's the code. Yeah.
Yep, and then it's then completely fine. They're like, oh yeah, you can pass. and then Cisco and crew all turn to him. They're like, how did you're just a tailor, Garrick. How did you know that? And he's like, oh, I just picked it up while I was sewing some trousers. It's just so good.
I just picked it up. So
funny.
We've introduced our villain Dukat, right?
Yes.
We get to Deep Space Nine. Kira's in charge. Mm-hmm. I think we come in on her first. Like we introduce her just walking the station, having like walking with some like security guard character, and just even all this time later, no security guard will ever be Odo, and having her basically giving a walk and talk debrief of this current status of the station, the current status of Federation space or whatnot. Like, it's a good, easy expositional walk and talk that gets her to Quark's. That she's just like walking from her office, and it travels the geography of the station, which is always like we're seeing the station as she moves through it from command down a turbo lift across the promenade over to Quark's. It gets us a good look at the whole set, the whole place. Gets into Quark's, and then there's Quark, and Quark would be the one to be like, I know it's been a while, but our security is never going to be as good as it used to be. It's like, I know. I get it, okay?
The whoever this new Trill is could be the new constable. Because that's a role that has to be filled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having the head of security / the constable of the station being this Dax, being a Dax character.
Being a Dax.
Oh, that actually solves some of like the relationship, because Dax carries Jadzia within, like the symbiote has Jadzia and Ezri still. Oh, and it's interesting to think of a Trill being that Ezri's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And
then dealing with those dynamics, because there would be some kind of conflict between Ezri and this new Dax, and the Dax symbiote could kind of feel betrayed by
Julian.
Julian, and by Ezri choosing a different life than one with the Dax symbiote.
And Deep Space Nine always did a good job of juggling like religious undertones, overtones, the zealot of Kywin and the Bajorans and whatnot. So it's interesting. It's like someone who leaves their faith. Yeah. Like I know that being a Trill and having the symbiote isn't a religion per se, but it's such a chosen thing.
It's a tradition and a custom for sure. Yeah. And that would be sort of betraying your culture.
But at the same time, Ezra's excuse is like, I never was supposed to have this anyway. I was just the default. Like I got it because I was here.
And going along with that too, you could have Kira be one of the people who expected Sisko to return. Mm-hmm. And then when it's Dukat, her most hated frenemy, nemesis, like that would be this crushing blow of thinking that Bajor is going to be ushered into a new era of peace. Yeah. And then
he shows up.
It's this ultimate evil instead in this time of awfulness.
If we get her into Quarks, we introduce kind of like the setting, and she's got the report of, and she's disappointed she didn't get to go to the ceremony, but she's looking forward to getting reports back from it, only to have basically the kickoff. We've got the prologue, we've introduced some of the characters, and kick it off with the news reports popping up of like an attack on Bajor, and Kira's like, give me reports, I need ships, I want shuttles ready, and then seeing, even if it's just a fuzzy image of Dukat's face and Quark, or one of the we need to have everyone in my ready room now, senior staff. Now we have our enemy. We don't know what his motivation or what his plan is quite yet. Yeah, but I think Kira is our captain. I think she is our. Even though this was Sisko's show, and we do need to fold Sisko back in here. Right. I think it's Kira who is our Janeway, Sisko, Picard, right? Like, yeah. And that's not something that I think the only example of this I can think of is Pike being the captain in the pilot, and then they handed it off to Kirk in the series, right? So to go into a Deep Space Nine series and that your figurehead is now Kira, I think there's some potential there to be like, cool. She's not a visitor's older now. She's more distinguished than ever. I follow her on Twitter. She's awesome. Yeah. To see her as in our leadership role, this former terrorist, her arch enemy is back. I think this works for whether it's a film or a miniseries, that you have a very personal vendetta between the leader of the group and the villain.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think that's great because you have the most conflict and things to do with that character from that point forward.
So how do we get Worf into here? And we also want to discuss getting Sisko back, of course, because we've been waiting for, in some other scenario timeline in our world where this is unfolded, the person to direct this is Avery Brooks. After watching the documentary of like his style, and you could always tell when one of the actors, to this day I can tell when one of the actors directed an episode of a show by how little they're in it. Yeah, you can always be like, Clark Gregg was only in the opening of this episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., directed by Clark Gregg. Oh, that makes sense.
Got it, yeah. He was doing other stuff.
It was either that or a pregnancy.
Makes complete sense. Speaking of Worf, that's a good question. Where is Worf at the end of DS9?
He becomes the ambassador to the Klingon Empire. Okay. And so he's left the station.
Okay, so in that role, what if you have this conflict with the Klingon homeworld? I think we've talked about this before, where Klingons have always been this very, warlike race, and violence is very much part of their culture. And it could be interesting to have this kind of uprising of a group of Klingons that realizes that this violent nature is not a sustainable way to have a society. And you show all this conflict that's happening on the Klingon homeworld. And then you find out that that the rebel leader is Alexander.
I had a feeling that's where you were going to go. There's something that DS9 did was address a non-warrior Klingon. I don't remember where I heard this. I just heard someone talking about this recently. The Klingons are a space traveling race. They have multiple planets that they have formed, like communities on, right? Can you imagine a Klingon scientist, like a geek in a lab, like developing faster than light dilithium crystal travel? Like, they're all these like screaming sword, bathlet wielding maniacs. They're just like, oh, the blood! Like, guys, do you mind? I'm really trying to get this formula done.
Like, Klingon engineers would be a great character to introduce.
Like, and
because it's completely contrary to everything in their society.
Right? Just to be like, guys, I don't appreciate that. Yes, block ta, I get it, but I'm trying to get this done over here.
Kapla, whatever.
Alexander leading a passive resistance.
Yeah. A passive resistance is already a funny concept.
A Klingon.
It's like, oh, it's an uprising, but it's like they're passive.
Like really. Like, they're not into the traditional...
Rising up against violence.
Against violence, yes. Yeah. Very calmly, very calm. Well, to tell you the truth, that might be something that could reflect into our current society, right? Like, anything we've pitched so far works as a cool Star Trek action-y, fun scenario, but delving into some sort of political unrest within a Klingon race of people is an opportunity, and as Jim and I like to say often, we're not qualified to say what that would be.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting it, and someone much more qualified to delve into that sort of racial divide within a race. I'm not qualified to be the one to do that, but I'm suggesting there might be a way to reflect our current society in that uprising of Klingons. And while that's an interesting idea to do with Worf as an ancillary story, how does Worf involve himself against Dukat?
Good question.
And off the dome right here.
Yeah.
Off the dome!
Off the dome!
If Dukat, we'll have to figure out exactly what his motivation is, but he's going to need an army. And if there's a sect of Klingons who want to go back, oh shit, I just figured it out. God damn it. If there's a group of Klingons who really aggressively miss the warring times of the good old days and really want to get back to fighting and murdering.
There we go.
Who better to recruit and to get the layman's in there to have the Klingons be the bad guys in a sense? You got Dukat now has an army.
Right. Yeah, what if you have the Klingon homeworld basically on the verge of total reform, where they're almost completely pacifist, and then Dukat is appealing to this small group of Klingons who want to bring it back to the good old days.
Make it
Kalis again.
Get it Kalis again. Thank you for finding one. Now we have
make it Kalis again.
Oh my god! Do not make that T-shirt. Hashtag make it Kalis again. Oh boy!
So funny.
Now we have Dukat. Well, what's Dukat's motivation? Because we got him an army now.
We got him an army.
That's more than enough reason for Worf to have to even come to DS9 and be like, a whole bunch of my Klingons. That was not how he would talk. Have just. Oh, you got an idea?
I got a thing.
Oh, good. Max has got an idea.
So, Dukat's motivation is he wants to retake Cardassia because isn't Dumar ruling Cardassia now, or am I wrong now?
I don't remember who ended up ruling Cardassia, but having some sort of legacy character be involved,
right? So basically, I mean, whoever's ruling Cardassia, Dukat always wanted to be the top of that food chain.
Oh yeah,
and he was for a little bit.
Yeah.
So him trying to reclaim that throne and then expanding the Cardassian Empire across the entire Alpha Quadrant and beyond,
but
could be
him coming back as a
motivation.
as a Power-wraith who's possessed Dukat. There's sort of a repeating theme here of like symbiosis and disconnected symbiosis. We got a Trill that's no longer a Trill. We got a husband and wife who wanted to have a child in Bashir and Ezri. We have Quark and Odo, or Odo being missed by Kira and Quark. There's a lot, the Alexander and Worf relationship. Dukat being a Power-wraith and wanting to initiate, like the Power-wraiths are want to burn it all down.
Right.
Dukat wanted to control it all. I'm trying to find a way to. There's a better way to say this.
A way to bring them together.
There's a better way to say this, but I think it's essentially, look, the founders had a good idea. They just went about it the wrong way. I know how to get this done. I can take over the Alpha Quadrant.
Right.
Like, so now it's, even though it's not really Dukat, it's this like echo of him.
Mm-hmm.
He still has Dukat in him, and Dukat would be the kind of guy to be like, I could do what the founders did. I could do better than the founders did. They had the Jem'Hadar. I have Klingons. They're not dependent on something that I offer them that's a physical thing. They are dependent upon the thing they want, the figurative desire that they have. Just hear the poetry of a Cardassian saying it's so much better than me. The founders had it wrong. They tried to control this way. This is control. This is the freedom these people want. And I can do what they could not. Right?
I love it.
That's his plan. His plan is to just do what the founders did, but better.
Right. And what that means is basically do exactly what they did, but he's on top.
Yeah.
And that's the secret power motivation. Or not so secret.
Yeah. I can't remember the actor's name. It's like right on the tip of my tongue, but he's the actor he's played multiple characters throughout modern Star Trek. He played the go-between.
Jeffrey Combs.
There it is, yes. Getting Jeffrey Combs in
Weyoun.
Weyoun's
dead.
Well, no, he's a clone. Like, there's multiple Weyouns.
But
they killed them all. He's the last one.
I think they killed them all because I remember the line, I may be the last Weyoun. It's so funny. Because
getting Jeffrey
Dumar specifically attacks the cloning site for Weyouns because he hates them so much.
He hates the Weyouns.
So funny.
Getting Jeffrey Combs in there as Dukat's like lackey, I think is fun.
You got to get Jeffrey Combs somewhere in there.
Having him be some sort of new alien race of Star Trek's always introducing new characters, like new types of characters, and getting Jeffrey Combs to be. He played the Andorian in Enterprise, not a great series, but getting him to play an Andorian or are Orions the green ones?
Yes, Orion,
something like that. So he's basically I want to conquer the universe bad guy, which we don't really have a lot of, especially in the Star Trek movies, because the villains throughout the movies are usually like revenge for a specific thing or take over a small thing. There's never been I'm going to conquer the universe bad guy.
Yeah.
Particularly someone who might succeed at first go, right?
Right. And I think with that storyline too, you could bring the founders in as a counter to Dukat and kind of bringing basically the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. Where
so we could bring a changeling back that's not Odo,
right?
Like Odo sent me, Kira. I'm like a founder appears in front of Kira, and she's like, as it's formed, like maybe she gets some sort of gift, like a package is sent to her or whatnot, and as it comes out, she thinks she's about to see Odo again, and it's some young, sexy actor playing. Oh, you're not Odo, but hello,
hello, how's it going? But yeah, it could be that they're trying to recruit the founders to try to combat this new threat. But since the founders are so diminished from the events of everything, they can't really do much.
If Dukat goes, if the audience, if we assume, like, if we see him get the Klingons, like recruit the Klingons, we're like, oh shit, he just got himself an army, and then we see him attack DS9 to get through the wormhole, right?
Yeah.
And then where the hell is he going? And then we see him get to the foundlings, the changelings, the founders' homeworld.
Yeah.
And we think he's going to try to recruit them. He blows the planet up.
That would be insane.
And now there is
he's easily killed the main villain of all of DS9.
And especially if it's leading up, like he's there, he's doing another speech because Dukat loves to talk.
He loves it. He loves it.
And having Odo, if we can find some way to represent Odo, Renee Jones did wear a lot of prosthetics, so we could have someone doubling for him to be like, Dukat, if you think for 1 second we're going to join you, you're out of your mind. And Dukat saying like, oh, no. I didn't come here to recruit you. I came here to destroy you. What? And it's like, yeah, I just wanted to be clear that I'm going to do better than you. I am going to succeed where you had all failed. And I needed you to know that. And then... Because then it's like constantly... We're seeing our heroes get knocked against the ropes, like, as Ducat's, like, just wreaking havoc.
And then, with the founders destroyed, the Jem'Hadar have to face the shortage of Testracell White.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's got to be something interesting to do with that.
Having them dependent upon Bajor or the Federation to be like, oh, that gets us Julian back in the fold, or O'Brien.
Maybe. So, what's the agent place called again?
Section 32. Section 31.
Whatever.
Get it right, nerds.
Whatever number. So Section 31 could recruit the Jem'Hadar in order to try to defeat Dukat. But then there's this conflict between the Federation and Section 31 because they're doing what the Federation doesn't want to do in order to win.
Mm-hmm. It's like, and that's another thing that Sisko was good at, was playing dirty. He's like, we have to win by any means necessary, and it's going to take some shitty things, right? That's what you're suggesting? That they don't, that Kira doesn't agree with Section 31?
Kira doesn't agree with enslaving the Jem'Hadar using drugs the way that the founders did. Because she's like, well, if we do that, then we're just as bad as them, and we're doing exactly what they did. Then there could be a conflict there.
There's a good conflict. We're creating a lot of great conflicts here.
Resolution's hard, but
okay,
we'll tie it up eventually.
How does O'Brien get back in here? If the station is attacked by Dukat and then gone, we need as many engineers as possible to come in and protect the station, which is Ducat's coming back through that wormhole, and we don't know when. He took a whole bunch of freaking birds of prey through that with him. We need to prepare for what will ultimately be the final battle of this first act of the first part of what is either a miniseries or a trilogy of films or whatnot. We need to get every ship here we can, reinforce the station, and that gets O'Brien back.
A fun thing for that could be, so O'Brien is, caught waiting at the basically destroyed DS9 station, and he's like trying to repair everything and figure out a plan before Dukat gets back.
Looks like these haven't been replaced since I was here.
yeah. And he has to do all of this. He's cut off from the Federation and has to do all of it with Klingon engineers. And he has to,
That's fun. We get our Klingon engineers.
Yes, we get our Klingon engineers in there.
Wait.
And he has to work together with the Klingons.
Oh my God. Kira asked for help to fix the station because Dukat's coming back, and the only help that came from Klingon engineers.
Yes, and she's turned on the Federation because of the whole Tetracell White thing.
Sure, she does it
so she could be on her own, but that's where the Klingons could come in.
If there's an additional conflict, there's some sort of contrived reason why the Federation wouldn't send the cavalry, like her on a video conference call with Admiral Janeway or whatever, some other character who's on Earth, like, listen, we're dealing with X, Y, and Z with this whole other plot that might be in another movie series we might get for Voyager, means we can't send you any help, but we're sending you some Federation allies that will. And then the Klingons show up and she's like, this is what you sent me? I'd rather they had not come at all. Isn't O'Brien there? Yes, Chief O'Brien's here as well. And then we got Worf there with he brought the few ships he could, plus he's suffering the aftermath of a whole bunch of Klingons going bonkers and running away with Dukat. We got Klingon engineers, we got Chief O'Brien fixing up the place. And
the reason the Federation doesn't help Kira could be that they're like, you're the reason this entire conflict started.
Yes.
Your whole planet facilitated Dukat's return. So why would we help you?
If maybe, yes, that that's the subtext of what's being said without directly
saying it.
Because then she could throw it back in their face. Kira being the fiery high like the she is. She's like, you're only doing this because you think I did this, and like, listen, we have to discuss in committee before we can send. And like, fuck your committee. Click. Oh, Kira just said the F word. So Ducat's went to Gamma Quadrant, and there's a chance he's going to come back. Mm-hmm. Again, whether this is over a film or over a miniseries, I let's not worry about that right now. There's a couple factors here that I'm wondering about. Sisko's return. How do we facilitate that? That wouldn't be too hard because he could just appear. If he appears, actually, let's do that. Sisko's return. Does he come to say, "You got this, Kira? You're back! Oh my God!" You're like, she appears before him, or he appears before her, like one of the what do they call it? The aliens from
the prophets.
The prophets. If he appears visions. If he appears in a prophet vision to say, my return, I cannot return yet. Like basically cameoing Sisko to be like, Kira, this is the beginning. I'm not going to Deus Ex Machina this show up and save the day. Can't you tell you're Benjamin, please just shut the wormhole. Like, don't let it open up back. Like, don't let him through. Like, help us out here. What are we supposed to do? Does that work? Or like, do you want Sisko back on the station? Do you want him present? Do you want him taking command and saying XYZ, let's take out this power wraith?
I mean, you could do kind of a callback to one of the best episodes of DS9, The Visitor, where Jake is following the disappearance of his dad and like waiting for his return. Mm-hmm. And
is that the one where you see Jake age?
Yeah, that's the one where you see Jake aging, and then his dad is visiting throughout time,
yes.
different portions of his life.
Great episode.
Yeah. Another thought I had was, what if in these prophet visions that Kira is having, mm-hmm. what if she is returning to the disappearance of Sisko from the last episode, and the Sisko that is in the wormhole is like, why do you exist here? So then we have a callback to the pilot.
Oh, so it's which is why the prophet asked him,
right?
If she shows up there.
Yeah, because in the pilot, Sisko's wife dies, mm-hmm. and he keeps returning to the spot of her death, and the prophets are like, why do you exist here? And it's this kind of commentary on grief, which I really like.
Yeah. So having Kira be able to communicate with Sisko without directly bringing him into suddenly appearing on the bridge to say, like, fire all torpedoes.
Right. Because I think the easiest way to bring him back would be to use Sisko as an ex machina at the end.
Right.
And bring him back as the cavalry.
Right.
Just be like, Sisko burst through the window.
And I don't like that.
No,
I don't like that.
It's too obvious.
It seems like cheap. Literally a god showing up.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm not against the idea of having Kira, of him appearing to Kira and to give her visions in some sort of guidance, which, boy, talk about lucky for her, because she's such a believer for so mm-hmm. long, to finally be gifted with visions of a prophet who is represented as her friend.
And it'd be interesting to have them having these conversations about how Sisko never wanted to be the emissary, mm-hmm. and yet, look, mm-hmm. he clearly was. He clearly is, and he has to like accept that you are a god.
Uh-huh. However, this comes to its ultimate conclusion, to give us a moment of the power wraith as Ducat back where he's supposed to be,
mm-hmm.
face to face with the prophet that is Sisko, having this moment of like, oh no, you were never gonna win. You never were gonna win. You are destined. Your destiny is to fail. And the reason why is because of the strength of love and community and passion, what goodness have you. And that's just that. Then why did I get to go back? I was so close. Why did I have that? And because you didn't go back for you went back for everyone else to basically you can unite around an evil essentially. I don't know if that's a good I don't know if that really is the best way to do that, but just having that moment where Dukat does fail again, that the power wraiths fail again, and that they get that rubbed in their face by the snooty prophet who's like, this is just how it works, buddy. Good guys win, bad guys lose. Go back to your hole.
But yeah, definitely having a moment between Sisko and Dukat on the astral plane would be really good.
There's a couple characters to consider adding into this. If we have our basically getting our main group together for one big final battle station versus, right? There are some possibilities of creating what already exists as the next generation of characters. Jake is there, Molly, right? Molly O'Brien.
Definitely.
Whoever Julian and Ezri's kid is, this new Trill. One of the mistakes, and I said I didn't want to go too much into criticizing the current stuff. One of the mistakes Discovery makes is their cast is way too big. They have, where we're just complimenting DS9 of being able to expand their world so much. They had their core 7 characters, and all the other characters around them were built upon those 7, right? Whereas Discovery is just like, here's a character, and here's a character, and here's a character. And they don't spend any time earning that ability to
There's no character development.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
So I'm not trying to make that same mistake here, but I do think there's a way, especially in what I'll call a post-Avengers Infinity War world, where you can do a movie with that many characters that's completely coherent. I think there is a way to introduce Molly and Jake, and Jake's old, like he's a man at this point. He's not little Jake anymore, but to have these next generation of Deep Space Nine characters sort of being positioned in such a fashion that there are stories to be told with them taking over from the old guard. Not that I want to do that in this movie, but just having them there as potential future stories.
Right. You could with Jake do sort of because the Bajorans would view him as the son of God, basically.
Oh, geez, yeah. Or at least a god, yeah.
Yeah, so you could do sort of an echo of what was going on with Sisko in the entirety of Deep Space Nine, where he's kind of rejecting this idea that he is the chosen one.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do that again with Jake, but have him be less confident about it, because he's not a born leader.
No, Jake.
So he would have to grow into that over the course of whatever this is.
I think that Jake's best sellers are always on Bajor, like, because he's a writer, right?
Yeah.
And his books always sell out. Like, my best market is Bajor. And it's because the Bajorans buy his stuff thinking it's like got hidden codex stuff, like, oh, I read your most recent novel. Were you saying that this character represents the... No, I wasn't saying that. Yeah, okay. No, but I think you really were. No, I wasn't.
Yeah, and he struggles with, he has this success, but it's because of his dad, and he can't get out of his dad's shadow.
It's like, I'm not writing allegory. I'm just, at least not allegory for what you think it is.
Right. That could be funny and good.
So we sort of like, simplest plot, Dukat comes back, he recruits some Klingons, he goes through the Gamma Quadrant, more into the Gamma Quadrant via the wormhole, he blows up the Founder's planet, he comes back, his plan is to start wiping out the Alpha Quadrant and take it over.
Right.
That's the villain's plan, action beats throughout. Some of the plots that we've pitched here, we have Worf dealing with like a new era of Klingon that is as much to his chagrin as it might be, and as much as to my chagrin to say it, a bunch of snowflakes. That's an interesting plot to play with there.
To have him navigate.
Yeah.
To have him in the middle of that would be really good.
Yeah, he's thinking of television tropes of like the dad who's so out of touch in like sitcoms where it's like, I don't understand this new group of new generation of kids. That's what he's dealing with, is that the idea of tradition, Klingon battle, bloodlust is like phasing away Okay, boomer. Like,
yeah.
Poor Worf.
And his conflict between that and his son.
And leading these people that
Right.
he's trying to his best to be the ambassador and maybe even further up on the leadership of Klingon itself.
And that goes into, too, just making a comment on now about trying to lead a divided world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is just really difficult.
Yeah. We delved in this subplot of Julian still being involved with Section 31, having a kid, and we have this new Trill sort of dynamic of what did Ezri give up? What did he give up? She did give up her Trill, like her symbiote, to try to sustain a family and live the life she wanted. He supposedly gave up what he wanted to do and is still doing. So there's a little bit of marital conflict there. And like, we both sacrificed, and now I find out you didn't sacrifice anything. Like, there's some drama to be had there, which, who's going to solve that is either Garrick or the new Trill is the one to be like, look, I know you both better than you know yourselves.
Yeah.
Because I've been here. She's the voice of, or they are the voice of reason, this new unassigned Trill character.
Garrick could be telling Julian, too, that having a relationship and living this life does not work.
Mm-hmm.
The classic spy thing.
Yeah, he's like,
you can't have a wife.
I'm alone.
There's always one last job.
It's always one. And you will be alone forever and become a tailor and befriend some nerdy little uptight fancy pants doctor, and that will be your life for the rest of your life. I feel like you're talking about me. No, I meant figuratively or hypothetically. One of those. Love Garrick.
I love that. Garrick's so great.
If we use Kira as our leader, as the one who's leading this battle, who's leading the station, the one who ultimately has to be the one to make the tough call, to be the hero that saves the day in the end, right? What's her arc? Like, what can we do with her that makes her basically the linchpin of all this? Because we have all these wonderful little subplots, and we have this overall idea of what this villain's going to do. What's Kira's story? You know what I mean?
I think going along with the theme of leading a divided world, she could be struggling with a crisis of faith where, as we were talking about, Dukat has returned instead of her savior.
Mm-hmm.
And so she is struggling internally with that while still trying to move forward with ship's operations and trying to literally hold DS9 together because it's basically been destroyed.
Yeah. She has to lead despite, like, she's not just the ship being broken, not just the station being broken and her faith being broken.
Having this internal conflict.
And she has to put all that aside to do what she has to do, what she's supposed to do, which is, and that's a sacrifice that leaders make all the time. Leaders are put into a position of taking all the blame and all the credit, and no matter what happens, we can point to any point in history who got the credit for being the hero. What did that cost them? We can look at Churchill and FDR. We can look at George Washington. If you want to go Revolutionary War, you can look at current presidents like George W. Bush all the way to Biden. Like, hero or villain for whatever they might be, we only get to see what they're willing to show us as the leaders. What are they sacrificing personally? And we kind of have some themes to play in that. Julian not willing to sacrifice his role in covert activities, Worf sacrificing his love of the tradition of Klingon. That sacrifice of a leader. That's, I don't know, like that, yeah.
Which because that goes along with just what DS9 has always been about, which is this moral gray area, and how, at least in our thing in particular, there often as a leader there are no good choices.
Yeah,
there's only the choice that causes the least damage. So you have to choose between all these things where all of the directions are bad, but you have to figure out what's the most morally right one?
Yeah.
There's no obvious.
How do I
perfectly right choice.
How do I sleep at night? I don't. Like that's the position Kira has to be in. So how do the heroes win, and what do they win in the end? Right? I mean, obviously beating Dukat is how you win here. In a big blockbuster, it just comes down to final boss battle. But what I think would make this work is because the characters have all these private journeys in the midst of this battle, in the midst of war, which again goes to what DS9 was always about, is these private battles in the midst of war or the aftermath of war. Yeah, it comes down to a pew, 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 right?
As it always does.
As it always does.
Throwing a weird idea into this.
Give me a knuckleball here.
Yeah, knuckleball. Something people wouldn't expect. What if at the end, it's the Ferengi that saved the day?
Oh, man. Weird. That's a weird choice right there.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the Ferengi and trying to figure out how to bring them into this. And there's this one character that I really like that I wish they had done more in the original series of DS9, where it's basically an episode that is Mulan, where you have this, where you have that female Ferengi character who is really good at business.
Yeah.
And just having that be more of a theme, and having on the Ferengi homeworld, this uprising of female Ferengi that are like, no, we've had enough. We don't want to be naked.
Dude, I think you're onto something here. Okay, so everything we've sort of like mapped out here, we're trying to come to this conclusion that's satisfying to some, like a lot of these themes we've created here. And we've already laid down some groundwork of the obvious, like this battle will be won by brute force. This battle, our race exists because of this, that, and the other. And Kira was a rebel. She is a terrorist. That's how they survived. They were the underdogs, and she figured out how to survive because she had to. But in the end, the mouse beat the lion. Well, embrace the fact that the wrong choice, the less obvious choice, the bad choice of a bunch of female Ferengis, a bunch of pacifist Klingons, like the Bajorans themselves, like getting all the people who shouldn't be able to win this battle. Like if Starfleet and all the big ships aren't going to come here, then I'm going to recruit the rebels, because I'm speaking as Kira. Kira is going to recruit the upstarts, the rebels,
that's so good.
And so
then it's like this Ocean's 11, but it's the island of misfit toys.
Yes,
basically. So she's like going around recruiting all these.
What a kick in the balls to Dukat to come through with like, I got the greatest warriors in space history, in Star Trek history as my fucking army, and I'm getting beat by female Ferengis, pacifist Klingons, and goddamn Kira Nerys. That's a beautiful.
I love that.
Oh my god!
And it fits in with the whole story of the Ferengi homeworld too, which is that the men run things, but they're all idiots. They're all like completely stupid. And then these women that are behind the scenes are actually competent in pulling the strings. Like that's how Quark's mother always was. Yeah. And like any female Ferengi we've ever seen
is always like a genius.
Always a genius.
It's because they're being underestimated.
Right.
And yeah, what better way to destroy an enemy than to win by being underestimated? Kira, that's how the Bajorans beat the Cardassians in the end, is that they just beat them through cloak and dagger, mice fighting lions techniques, terrorist techniques. And then it goes back to our gray area of cheating, basically, like using these very morally gray things to survive and beat the bad guy. But I mean, we have created a very specific, this is a bad guy who needs to be defeated. There's no gray area here.
No.
However, if we do create even just one Klingon that represents the Klingons who turn, they're going to have to face the consequences of, you chose the wrong side of this battle. That this wasn't a war. You didn't get a war. This was a battle led by one bad man, and you chose to side with him, and now you have to face the consequences of that. And that's, Worf giving that speech to, like, you're all war criminals. You are coming back, and you are facing trial. And it will not be trial by combat, and you do not get the traditional, we are a new society, and this is just how it's going to be. Like, so there is still some consequences for villains that that they followed the wrong guy.
And although, like the original DS9, although the overarching conflict is sort of simple, it's basically the Dominion trying to completely overtake the Alpha Quadrant.
Right.
How we get there and the political and social dynamics that are happening on the outside of that are very nuanced, and there's a lot of moral gray area there. So
yeah, there's a great episode where I sort of alluded to it earlier, where Sisko has to lie to the Romulans to get them to join the Federation fight.
It's a fake.
It's a fake. But he weighed all his options, and the best option was subterfuge. The best option was to trick the Romulans. Like, you can't stay neutral, and we don't want you to finally be convinced by the Dominion to fight against us because we can't beat you. We need you on our side, and the only way that's going to happen is lying to you.
Right. And that's another episode about the least worst choice.
Yeah.
Because he even says at the end of that episode, he's like, and I would do it again.
Yeah.
Because it was the only way.
And having those prophet visions with Kira, you have a chance to say more or less something like that of Kira being like, I don't know what the right choice is. I don't know what the good choice is. And Sisko as a prophet saying, there is no good choice. There are only bad choices. You just have to find the least bad choice. That is what a leader, you know this. You have been leading for over 20 years now, and you have been leading even longer as a rebel. You were a nothing in the dirt and in the caves and in the shadows, and you found a way to crawl out of that and lead. And that could be the impetus for her to go, you're right. That's what I did then, and that's what I can do now. I can crawl out of the rubble.
Right. And even better that she would be going around and playing mentor to all of these underrepresented groups because she was there.
Yeah.
She was there and she crawled out of it. So she's the perfect person
to
talk to all these people and have them rise up against the man.
To go to Alexander and the pacifist Klingons and be like, I get it. I understand. Follow, and then going to Worf and be like, Worf, you need to understand. I've been in their position and I've been in your position. Suddenly she's in the right place. She's inheriting Sisko's diplomacy, and we're putting her as a character in a position of the captain, of the leader of this version of Trek.
What could be interesting is you have the first half of this miniseries, she is on the side of the Federation and trying to be a diplomat to all of these groups, to be sort of to solve all these conflicts, but then having an internal conflict in herself, being like, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this, and yet I'm like on the other side of where she's basically playing the diplomat to her past self, which would be a really good arc. And then like midway through, you have her change her mind and be like, I'm not doing this.
Like that moment of speaking with Sisko as a prep where he's like, you've been here before, you know how to crawl out of this. Like, I do. I got to do it that way. I got to stop playing like I'm a freaking Starfleet Federation officer, which I am. But no, we got to do it my way. And then she does that strut. Remember that strut she used to walk with, like a really like confident strut in the first couple seasons? It was a weird walk. She always had this very like marchy, sort of swinging her arms like, yeah.
But I was gonna say, which is what Sisko would do all the time, like Prime Directive out the window when it suited him. You know?
Boy, they are lucky he wasn't traveling planet to planet.
Right.
Like that's something that I thought. It's an interesting thing about when you look at the Prime Directive of like you cannot affect a planet, a people beyond what they are capable of, right? That's essentially what the Prime Directive is. I might be misquoting it there. I'm not quoting it, but just the idea of the Prime Directive is just a society needs to get itself further than it is. You can never affect it. And Kirk never did that. Really. He was in uncharted territory. He was so far away from the Federation that it made sense that he was just, this is just how we have to do this, okay? I don't have time for committee, right? And Kira's much more like that. Cisco was like that too, where it was like, look, we're way the hell out here. You obviously don't care about us. Like, we're Federation, but we still have Cardassian goddamn computers in this place. You obviously don't care. So I'm going to break the Prime Directive whenever I need to get the job done.
Right, and same with Janeway.
Yeah.
When you're in the Delta Quadrant, what's the point?
Screw the Prime Directive.
Why would you do the Prime Directive at all?
Picard is the best captain because he followed the rules.
Yeah, quote unquote best captain. He followed all the rules
because he was a company man.
Which does make Picard interesting and unique in his own right. But I don't think you should judge captains by their compliance to the Prime Directive.
No.
Like that, it's ridiculous to me.
TV show Picard was a completely different entity from movie Picard and definitely from current Picard. But yeah, he was...
And show Kirk was different than movie Kirk, too.
Yeah.
Show Kirk is like if Riker was captain,
yes,
in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
He just goes in, he's like, oh, any women here? Well...
the thing, not to tangent off, but I'm going to, is that, movie Kirk, the movie series of Kirk and the guys and his crew, that story of an old man who is realizing he no longer has a place in the world he's always existed in, all the way up to Undiscovered Country, where we're sort of having echoes of Undiscovered Country in what we've just crafted for DS9, of like two old soldiers who still want the old war, who the hero realizes that war's over, man. We have to fight. We have to stop fighting this way. At least that was Kirk's solution. He's like, it's over. We're not the fight. We're not involved anymore. Like that was the past. We're done. We have to hand this off to another generation. Meanwhile, Kira, almost the flip of that, is like, we have to do this old school. And old school means breaking all the goddamn rules. And this book's going out the window. Yeah. Shoot it out the airlock.
Breaking the current systems of every race and just coming together and fighting against a common enemy.
I feel like this sort of thing is what Star Trek Discovery was trying to do. But I think what Star Trek Discovery... Did you watch any of season...
A little bit.
I feel like they were trying to do this idea of, we can't just keep doing the same old thing. We have to break it both as a production and narratively with the characters. But what they failed at was maintaining the heart and the core of Star Trek, which is... It has, as much as all this gray area we've just delved into and discussed, at the end of it, we have to know who the good guys are and we have to know who the bad guys are. And good guys being, I don't know, Discovery just rubs me the wrong way all the way through.
Yeah, not to be too harsh, but you can break the structure and the formula of a series while still maintaining the heart if you still have good story structure and character development and writing. Like if the story was good and it wasn't episodic like a lot of Star Trek series are, we would still accept it because it's just objectively good.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And still, and I do think not.
Breaking.
I lost my thought.
they didn't. I don't know. It's moving forward, and a lot of what the current stuff is doing is retreading space we've already been through.
Right.
And I think taking DS9, reintroducing the location, reintroducing the characters, reintroducing the core conflicts that are echoes of the conflicts we had before. It's a great way to continue the series without destroying what came before it.
Right.
We're building upon the foundation of what came before. And we've scratched the surfaces of what we could do with all these characters. And at the end of the day, with Ducat being destroyed and sent back into the to face Cisco one last time, to be told like if Cisco tells Kira when he first appears to her that no, this was not my return, this is just the beginning. He can say the same thing to Ducat when Ducat gets there and it's like, it's over, I failed again, I'd say, no, Ducat, this is just the beginning. Like if he echoes that, we have a cool, this happened, bad guy shows up, tries to kill a bunch of people and gets destroyed in the end. Cool, that's this very simple thing that happens, but we're littering it with all these very complex characters and themes. What's right, what's wrong, what's the right way to do something, what's the wrong way to do something.
And the core of Star Trek 2 has always been socio-political commentary and being a mirror of what's going on in the world now. Mm-hmm. And that's where quote unquote new Trek sort of missteps. Yeah, in my opinion.
They're just doing the shoot 'em up stuff. And then when they do try to do the conversation about, like, Star Trek Discovery introduced a non-binary character. Great ideas, not great execution in my opinion. Like in Trek, canonically, it's not a big deal to be non-binary. Like Riker had a relationship with a non-binary alien who decides, okay, I'm going to be female to this male, and her whole society rejects her, and like it's a really, at least especially for the 90s,
extremely ahead of its time episode. Yeah.
Ira Burr says in the documentary he feels like they failed discussing trans rights in the show. And
Prophet and Lace, one of the worst episodes of Star Trek, period.
Which one?
Prophet and Lace, where Quark dresses up as a woman, and it's just all this like slapstick, terrible, not good.
But we in honoring Deep Space Nine and hopefully honoring what Ira Byrne would want in terms of like making up for lost opportunities, we have this new trill to introduce that would give us an opportunity to discuss non-binary without dropping the ball like I feel like Discovery is.
Right.
Having more people of color, like that's something that Deep Space Nine I don't think gets enough credit for, is how diverse their cast was, especially for the late 90s. Captain Sisko, like this Sisko, black man leading this
and single father too.
Yeah.
Just a great example of he's just a great dad, and there's not a lot of representation there.
I'd love to see Jake have a kid at this point that he named Benjamin, right? Like Benny would be his, like Jake having a son to like carry on that tradition of
and trying to
fatherhood.
Be as good a father as his dad was.
His dad was, yeah. Because I love the relationship between Benjamin and Jake. Just how Benjamin like would hold his son and kiss him like on the top of his head, and like they had this beautiful father-son relationship. And I think there's an opportunity for whatever we do here. Please hire us. We want to do this.
And Jake's son could be a worshiper of the power wraiths.
Oh no! You got nuts! No, I refuse. No, we're not throwing that.
Throwing another wrench in that.
I don't even believe in your stupid. I don't care if Granddad was the good guys. I believe in the bad guys.
Son, no.
But I wouldn't be against. I wonder if our new. Oh no, I can't do that. That'd be weird. I'm just trying to think of like what to do with our Trill character and and some of the relationship opportunities. Did Kira ever find love beyond Odo? I mean, It's been 20 years. Surely she found someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's something that makes her stand out. Like Janeway, they never gave her someone. Picard, they never gave him someone. Like there's always this,
and that's a good comment that not everybody needs someone.
And I think that's a good Quark and Kira moment to be like, if there's any sort of bringing up the comment on like you never settled down, right? It's like. And Quark being like, you never needed anyone else to love. You got me. You're right, Quark. Don't ever touch me again. I'll tell you, I'll break your hand if you do this. How many times
I got myself, and that's all I need.
I think that's in the first episode. Is Quark tries to put the moves on Kira, And she's like, either you take your hand off my thigh or I break every bone in your arm. Oh, how'd that get there?
Oh, she's such a good character. I love her so much.
One
more comment.
Yeah, please.
One more comment on Discovery before we wrap this
before we wrap this up.
So I think that Discovery and just Trek in general now is catering to the wrong section of Trekkies, basically. Mm-hmm. So basically catering to the people who love TOS Kirk and just the guy that just goes into a society, screws everything up, and then leaves.
And then strolls away.
And also starting new series with, like Strange New Worlds, you have a white captain. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh, it's another white guy. What are we doing? It's like following up DS9 with Enterprise.
Right.
It's like we've got Archer. Oh, we've done this before.
Yeah.
Like why are we regressing?
We saw Captain Sisko. We got Captain Janeway. Okay, well, was this just like Paramount's too afraid to take a chance on going a different direction? A gay character.
Right.
And we have this Trill character that could literally be anyone, anything, a person of color. Like having Julian and Ezri have a child. We now have a mixed child. O'Brien has Molly, who is a mixed child as well. Like Jake being a black father to a black son. Like there's just so much diversity.
Right. Continuing the tradition of inclusion in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Is an important thing for sure.
And I feel like the what's problematic for the J.J. Abrams 3 movies, for Discovery, is it's being made by people who are picking like the obvious, what do you know about Star Trek? If you talk to someone who may not have indulged, who can't name episodes, I've seen a show here or there, I've seen a couple of the movies, right? I'm a fan, I like them. That's not enough to understand the potential, right? If it's like, oh, we're gonna do a Star Trek movie, cool. What should we follow it up with the 2009 one with? Wrath of Khan's pretty big. Why don't we do that one? That's the one everyone likes, right? We should do that. Like, okay, we need a bad guy. How about one that's like mad at the captain, like a revenge kind of thing? Should we do that again? Let's do that again, right? It's like like Star Trek 101 should not be the one class you took to then do a movie or a series.
And then remaking Wrath of Khan while preserving none of the themes of aging and coming into accepting your own mortality and that.
Honestly,
it's just such a simplified version. And as you were saying before, all the pieces to the Wrath of Khan puzzle are in the wrong spot,
in the wrong places,
into darkness,
right?
And all the characters feel like caricatures.
Yes.
Of the original series characters.
They didn't earn.
Oh, Spock is logical.
Yeah.
Oh, Kirk is a rebel. Oh.
Something that the sacrifice of Spock in Wrath of Khan was earned by decades to get there. Of decades of fan love for these characters. One of like the 3 episodes of the series, the cartoon, the motion picture, like decades had gone by before we got to Wrath of Khan. But even standing alone as its own film, if you just showed someone that movie, then there's enough character within that and the themes of age that it still works. Whereas Into Darkness, Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto, love them or hate them, they'd only shared a couple hours of screen time, if that, maybe an hour total screen time. The sacrifice meant nothing. Even as its own movie, it means nothing. We don't know what these characters' relationships are. With what we've just done with DS9, I think the risk of losing characters can be as powerful as actually losing them. We don't need to kill off characters. We could.
Right.
Like there could be some sacrifices in here. I know DD asked us to do a movie, but I do think this is the fit of a series, even if it's just 13 episodes.
Oh, definitely. I think there are too many moving parts in DS9 to make an effective movie unless it's like 4 hours long.
Right.
Because you have to, since the cast is so large and the conflicts so universe spanning,
You can't cram
it's difficult to cram that into a movie without really, really simplifying it.
I this may seem odd, maybe it's not, but I don't think Star Trek works as a film. I think The Next Generation, TOS worked in film because those characters were very minimally defined in their show.
Right.
Right? I think Star Trek The Next Generation, the cracks showed really quickly because the characters had been defined over 7 years, but you can't cram all that into a 2-hour movie without making some huge sacrifices and becoming caricatures.
Right.
And so those 4 movies are a diminishing amount of return because it's like, well, we can't focus on all the characters. We can only choose to focus on the captain and maybe one other. And then we need this captain to be the amped up version of what he was before, or not even who he was before. That's Next Generation. Deep Space Nine's characters are even way more complex. Right. Trying to cram them into a film, I feel like that's a setup for failure.
Yeah,
that's why
that's
Next
really
Generation and it's why the newer movies are failing, because you can't shorthand all these very important relationships, or you need to forget them. You need to either rebuild them completely or forget them. And there's so much shorthand in Star Trek. 2009, I think, was a great reintroduction, but then to just like blow through all the beats, I thought for sure the third one was going to be City on the Edge of Forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought for sure we're going to get time travel.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
It's too bad because the 2009 one, I was like, oh yes, I'm excited for the next few where they continue this journey and we get into, maybe a less actiony version of what we got in the first one, and that just
But on the other hand, Star Trek Beyond, Simon Pegg being so heavily involved in the freaking screenplay, found a way to, action to kick it off. Now let's separate the characters and define the relationships as they make their way back to each other, and then blow things up. Right? We get side quests of all the characters. You get Spock and Bones walking together. You get Kirk meeting the new character for the movie to exposit what the villain is going to be. Chekhov and Scotty. Like, there's a great character study.
Yeah, it definitely understood what the original characters were about.
Right.
In that movie.
Without just hand waving and being like, hey, you know these characters.
You know who they are,
Prosper.
Right?
Khan.
This guy's Khan.
Scotty,
no, he's not.
He's Scottish. He's not even Indian. Now, look, I know Ricardo Montalban is Spanish, and he was playing Indian, and there's some there's bad things happening.
It was
there.
a different time.
But it was,
okay.
Benedict Cumberbatch is practically as white as it gets. He's translucent here.
Yeah, seriously.
No, I won't do it. I won't do it. I was just about to go on a rant.
He's like grease on a McDonald's bag.
I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't love him as
no.
Khan.
Don't like him as Khan.
All that being said,
great and other stuff.
All that being said, we broad stroked a lot here, but I think we've laid down some foundation for the potential. We see what we could do here. We have the very easy bad guy shows up, defeat him, but we laid down the puzzle pieces that could be connected to have some really cool character exploration, thematic exploration, the relationships, the social commentary. Like, I think it's all there. If we had another 6 hours or another few days, we'll give you 13 episodes. But
yeah, for sure.
But I think I want to wrap it up here now as we approach the end here. Dee Dee, I want to know if we got your demand, but I also want to know if you've listened to this whole thing of us geeking out about Star Trek this whole time. Sorry, tangent. Weird. I don't need to announce my tangents. I'm just going to do them.
Just do them.
Forget I just did that. I don't know why this, of all fandoms, I feel it necessary to always, like, not apologize for, but like, okay, hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
We did a Star Wars episode. We talked Marvel. I let Jim do a whole Deadlands episode. Right?
It feels very touchy. It's like it feels like I'm going to offend a section of the fan base for some reason.
And either the Trekkies who like, okay, cross arm, do this right, or the people who like, I don't like Star Trek. It's nerdy. Like, if you made it this 2 hours into this and you haven't watched Star Trek, please do. Well, anyway,
we should come up with a introduction to Star Trek playlist. Just of all our favorite episodes.
Do you dislike? Do you have no interest in Star Trek?
Here's your list.
How many lights are there?
There are 4 lights.
There are 4 lights.
Oh, that one's so good.
That episode defined Cardassians.
Yes.
Like, oh god,
it's so good. I'd start with Measure of a Man. I mean, not that we have to do this right now.
No, we'll do it in a moment. We'll do it in a moment here, okay? I think that does it for this episode. So yeah, I'd love to know, Dee Dee, if we got what you did there. But I also want to hear from the rest of you. You can message us directly at studiodemandsit.com, or if you go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Studio Demands It. If you're not already, you can subscribe to us on all your pod forms that are available. And if you feel like giving us a little review, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, and that really helps us out within the algorithm. So thank you for those who have been doing that for us. But you can reach me directly as well as Jim, because we all know at this point he does not have social media. You can find me at TC's Big Head on Twitter and Instagram. Max, would you care to plug yourself in any way, shape, or form?
Sure. So, in case David didn't put in the plug for the Top Hat Balloon Show in the middle of this,
and David, you can't go back now and do it.
You can't do it.
You either did it before you got to this point, or you failed.
At this point, I think he put in something different out of spite.
Oh no! I'm sorry.
So then at the end here, I'm just going to plug the Top Hat Balloon Show again. TopHatBalloonShow.com. You can watch all 44 episodes. Of varying quality. It's a good time. It's great.
Good to great.
Mm-hmm. Good to great. Good to great. Yeah, that's the scale.
The crazy train's leaving the station.
It's leaving the station.
It's leaving the station, man.
Crazy accoutrement.
Please go check that out. Seriously, you'll not be disappointed. If you like to laugh, then you should go watch some Top Hat Balloon stuff. So
if you do, it's a question these days. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We will be back. We will be back again. Well, I'll be back. I hope we get Max back.
I'll be back.
If you want more Star Trek, give us more demands, and I'll bring Max back for that. Or I'll get him in here for like an Indiana Jones episode or something.
That sounds great.
Okay, he likes the idea.
Or Alien.
Oh, you heard it here, folks. All right, thank you all for listening. We'll be back again. I'll be back with Jim again soon. That's it. That's the end of the episode. That's how we end it.
There it is.
There's music playing right now.
I love it. Beautiful.